World War II,
And what was your branch of service?
the infantry, and the Air Force, Army Infantry, Army Air Force,
What was your highest rank?
captain.
And in what general locations did you serve?
Training for several years all over the U.S. and then over to the Philippines and Japan.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I was drafted.
Where were you living at the time?
I was living in New Canaan, Connecticut.
Do you recall the date you were drafted?
August 1941, August 7th.
Okay. So tell me about your first days in service.
Well, I was drafted into Fort Devens, Massachusetts, sent for basic training to Camp Croft in Spartanburg, South Carolina.
Okay. And how did it feel? How was basic training?
It felt all right. I'd been captain of the lacrosse team at Harvard and played a lot of tennis, and I found it not too rigorous.
Can you tell me some more about your boot camp training experiences?
Not much more. I did do a solo one of the entertainments one evening.
A solo, like a song?
Yeah, yes.
Do you remember the song?
Yeah, Green Eyes.
How does that go?
Fine. Oh, those golden green eyes.
Oh, do you want to sing the whole song?
No.
For us? No? Great. So how did you get to do that? Did you volunteer?
Yeah,
Yeah. Have you always been a singer?
yeah.
That's great. So did you have a talent show at basic training?
No, not particularly. Just that one show that we put on.
You had one
I
show
was
that you
part
put
of
on?
the show, yeah.
Right. And what did the other guys do in the show?
I don't remember anything else about it.
Mm-hmm.
I left early to go out on a date.
Oh. Do you remember your instructors?
No,
No. Okay. Was there anything that was difficult about it? About basic?
no, I didn't find it difficult. I found it rather good, yeah.
Okay, so after basic,
Well, then I was sent to Fort Dix, New Jersey to join the 44th Division. They were called the Appleknockers. They were a National Guard from up in New York State. And they had just been on maneuvers in South Carolina. They had been activated for a year, and they were coming back in the fall of 41 expecting to go home. And I was assigned to that unit, and I found their training was very lax. We would go out on patrol with a squad, and the corporal would just lead us off into the bushes and fall out, light up, and we'd just sit around and smoke. I was there December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day, walking a guard post on that occasion. I'll never forget, of course.
yeah, can you tell me more about that day?
And soon after that, we climbed on trucks and were sent to Shreveport, Louisiana, I suppose, to guard the Gulf and the Mexican border. Somewhere along in there, I was offered the opportunity to train and test for officer candidate school, which I did do later on. Meanwhile, the division was moved by train to Fort Lewis, Washington. And I was there when my orders came through to come back to Fort Benning in the spring of 42. to go to OCS. So that was in April '42. July 6th, I got my second lieutenant bars and was sent immediately to Camp White in Medford, Oregon. There we were training a brand new division, the 91st Division. And the idea was that we were a cadre to accept raw recruits and start them right off in basic training, right in our units. So I was platoon leader of a ammunition and pioneer platoon. And this platoon learned to do bridge building and road building and demolition and all kinds of construction. But to begin with, we trained these raw recruits, basic training and then advanced training in our work as a platoon.
Great. Can we go back? Let's go back to Fort Dix. That's where you were on December 7th.
Not very long.
So, can you tell me more about that day?
Well, only that we were very moved by the events at Pearl Harbor. Mm-hmm. And of course the 44th, the National Guard people knew that they weren't going home. Mm-hmm. They were stuck to stay in.
So from there, you went to Shreveport, Louisiana, right? So can you tell me a little bit more about...
Well, that trip, by the way, by truck was quite a dramatic thing. In the winter, actually some soldiers died from frost, from exposure. I guess they got drunk and in the truck just froze to death.
And these were soldiers who you knew?
No. Nobody I knew.
And you said that you were sent to Louisiana to guard the border, is that correct?
That's what I assume our mission would have been there, yes.
Okay, so then you went to Fort Lewis, Washington, is that right?
Right.
So how did you...
That was by train.
Okay. And then, so what did you do in Fort Lewis?
Nothing specific that I can remember. Well, I skied on Mount Rainier and suffered the wrath of my company captain because there was this new guy who was suddenly going to be leaving for OCS.
Right, so tell me about that. How did you have that opportunity to go to OCS?
Probably starting back in Fort Dix, but then also in Shreveport. We were put through training exercises, field exercises, close order drill, and so forth, and we were evaluated for officer training. So by the time I got to Washington, orders came through for me to come back to Fort Benning for officer candidate.
Great, so can you tell me more about OCS?
I don't remember particularly a great deal about it, except that I took to it very nicely and was quite proud to get my bars as a second lieutenant.
Great. So then from there you went to Medford, Camp White?
Camp
correct?
White in Medford, Oregon.
Great. So then where did you go?
Well, we spent a long time in Medford, Oregon. And there I made great friends with Al Crookton, who had the other platoon, the anti-attack platoon, anti-tank platoon. And there I met a librarian who had a car. So Al and I, and a librarian and his girlfriend, whom he later married, had a good time on leaves, going over the Rogue River and to Crater Lake and finding things to do all around there. Al was a good friend. In fact, I roomed with him after the war.
Can you spell his last name for me?
Alvin J. Crookton, Kruckten.
Great.
He was from Fargo, North Dakota.
Is there anything else you want to tell me about your time in Medford?
Just that it went on because, as I say, we trained these new recruits from the beginning, from basic. And then, first as a platoon leader, building bridges, built a bridge on the base across the ravine. It's probably still standing, I don't know. And then I was promoted to first lieutenant and assigned to headquarters company of the regiment as a gas officer.
You said it went on and on. About how long do you think you were in Medford, or do you have exact dates?
Well, let's see, the years from July 6, 42 to December 43. Yeah. Because in that time, as I say, I was made a first lieutenant and a gas officer, and they sent me to Edgewood Arsenal, Maryland, for further training in chemical warfare. And by this time, we'd been serving so long in this one place and not getting into combat, everyone else having exciting things to do. People were leaving, joining the paratroopers and so forth. And I was thinking about pilot training, but I didn't dare ask the colonel to permission to apply. But now I'm in Maryland on separate duty, and I walked into a flight surgeon's office, and they needed pilots, so he accepted me, and by the time I got back to the 91st Division, I had my orders to proceed to the Air Force. They were on maneuvers in Bend, Oregon. I went over to Salem, Oregon when I got my orders, bought a car for $700, I think it was, and drove to Santa Ana, which is near Los Angeles, Santa Ana Air Force Base. And that was a staging area for the Air Force. And that was December of 1943. So we spent some time there before I finally got, well, we went through testing to see what we were suited for. My test came through with certification to be a navigator or a pilot or whatever I wanted. I chose to be a pilot and was assigned to basic pilot training at Oxnard, California, Fort Hueneme. This is where we flew the twin engine, biplane, sorry. Trying to think of the name of this, anyway. We got our first training there in a single engine biplane. Great experience flying over those orchards. Orchards everywhere around Oxnard. Not anymore. A lot of them are gone. The next training was intermediate training in Taft, California, north of Bakersfield, or west of Bakersfield, in BT-13. And the next one, the advanced training in twin engine in Gardner Field in Douglas, Arizona. Now, all this time, I was a first lieutenant, but I was going through student training as an officer, along with a lot of cadets who were subjected to all kinds of discipline. And my good friend Pat Nealis and I were, as officers, were free to just laze around the pool while they were getting their training.
Was that unusual for?
There were quite a few of us
really?
going through as student officers, yes.
Can you spell Pat's last name for me?
Edward P. Nealis, N-E-L-I-E-S.
N-E-I-L-I-E-S?
N-E-L-I-E-S.
N-E-L-I-E-S.
Pat liked the fact I had a car, but anyway, he was a very good friend, and he was very good with the car. That car stayed with us right on through to further training. Let's see, the date of that I got my pilot's license was September 1944. Our class was 44H, H being August. So that's the date that I got my certification as a pilot. And at that time, we were ordered to Sedalia, Missouri for training as a troop carrier. I also got leave to go home at that time and took Pat Nellis with me to New Canaan. When we got to Missouri, Sedalia, Missouri, we were supposed to be trained in the C-47s, which is a twin-engine workhorse of the Army. And at that time, they were changing the field over from C-47 to C-46, which is a newer, bigger, heavier plane. So first they had to change the field over, the planes, then they had to train the instructors, and we had nothing else to do except drive to Chicago and have a good time. I still have the credit card from the Palmer House, Chicago.
The Palmer House?
Yeah.
What's that?
It's a hotel.
Oh. Okay.
So we brought a couple of girls back from Chicago,
You brought them
to,
back to Missouri?
to a rented house in Warrensburg, right next to Sedalia. And we would be flying our training flights, and would come back over the house and drop a note telling the girls, get the steaks on the Barbie, we'll be back soon. It was a nice life.
Wow. Whatever happened to those girls? Do you know?
Not really,
Okay.
except they did show up later on at Mather Field.
They showed up where?
Just before we left for the Pacific at Mather Field in
I see.
California. At any rate, I don't know, I don't remember their names.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay, so anything else about your time in Missouri?
Well, we flew to Denver one time. And in Denver, I acquired a coin, a silver dollar, which I've had ever since in my pocket. And it's so worn you can barely see the head, but that's because it's been in my pocket every day since 1944
And where did you get that? In Denver?
in Denver.
So why have you kept it in your pocket every day since?
Because I had it.
Is it a good luck charm?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you feel like it was a good luck charm
Yes.
during the war?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And ever since.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, through July 5th, 1945, we were ready for service overseas, and they assigned us to a crew. I was the pilot. We were crew number one of our whole group. We were assigned number one. Pat Nealis, Patrick Nealis was my co-pilot. My crew chief was Bob Adair, and my radio operator was Francis Baird.
Okay, so Bob Adair is Adair,
Right?
and the radio operator's name?
Francis Baird, Baird.
Okay.
We were ordered on July 5th, 1945. We were ordered to Salinas, California by rail, and at that place I signed for a new C-46. And we took that one up to Mather Field and hung around there waiting for orders to take off for overseas. So while we were there, what happened was the atomic bomb, which changed everything, of course. We were lazing about the pool, waiting for orders, and then that bomb happened. But we still took off on August 13th to Hawaii. Now this required filling the cabin with tanks. That's all we could carry was just tanks to take the gasoline required to get to Hawaii. I had a navigator, but actually it was too easy getting there to need the navigator because there were, I think, 4 ships stationed along the way from Sacramento to Hawaii that you could hone in on by radio. So I found my way to Hawaii quite easily. And there we got rid of some of the tanks. Saw a show that night, and the next morning took off, headed for the Philippines. Island hopping. Our first stop was Christmas Island, which is pretty close to Bikini, where they had a test bomb, the atomic bomb after the war. Then to Canton Island, and then on to Guadalcanal. But on the way to Guadalcanal, flying over Tarawa, on the radio we heard the news of the surrender of the Japanese, which I celebrated by firing a Very pistol through the hole in the roof that's provided for that purpose. So got to Guadalcanal, where we spent a day. At that place I had an opportunity to ride with another pilot flying a dive bomber, SBD, which was a nice experience. And then our next orders were to proceed to Biak, the other end of New Guinea, by way of Hollandia. And there I turned in my plane and received another one that was not filled with extra tanks in the cargo, and had orders to go to Clark Field in Philippines by way of Peleliu. And at Peleliu we had a layover because my crew chief heard some noises he didn't like in the engine, and we stopped to check that out. Had a little chance to look over the island. It had seen quite a bit of combat. And next stop was Leyte. Leyte was an interesting place to land because they had a metal landing strip made of kind of corrugated metal that sounded real loud when you landed on it. Next stop was Clark Field, the Philippines, where I turned in my plane. For all I know, it's still there because with the war over, actually people were starting to rip things out of planes, getting souvenirs.
Wow. Okay. So let's back up a little bit.
Surely.
Just to get a sense of the timeline. So you went from Hawaii to the Philippines. So what do you remember the date of when you left Hawaii? And then
August 13th.
August 13th. And then when you turned in your plane at Clark Field?
Well, somewhere around the 20th of August, I guess.
Okay.
Because on the 28th, I got orders to proceed to Ayashima.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you about, you fired a pistol in the roof of the plane?
Well, a Very pistol, which is a signaling pistol.
And
there's a hole in the roof for that purpose.
For the signal.
Yeah,
Now what did you call it? What kind of a pistol did you call it?
Very.
Very?
V-E-R-Y, I think.
Okay, great. Okay, so you turned in your Actually, is there anything else you wanted to say about that day when the Japanese surrendered? Do you have any other memories of that day?
Just that we were flying over Tarawa at that point on the way to Guadalcanal. We had been, hoping for something like that to happen after the bomb, because we were part of the invasion of Japan, planned invasion of Japan. And of course, the atomic bomb saved us from that.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, you said August 28th you went to Japan?
Well, to Ayashima, which is near Okinawa.
And tell me about that.
I don't remember much of that, except I think we were holed up there quite a while in kind of typhoon someplace nearby.
Okay.
And then we finally were sent to Tokyo September 3rd, the day after the signing on the Missouri. The Japanese signed their surrender.
So what was that like in Tokyo?
That was a terrific experience. I still had Pat with me, and he's quite a good company. We were in Tachikawa, which is a town, I don't know, maybe 20 miles, I guess, from Tokyo, with a good view of Mount Fuji. So we spent quite a bit of time in Tokyo. We were able to get a Jeep and have fun sightseeing around Tokyo. We made our headquarters in a Marunouchi hotel, had that as an informal officers club. And I had one particular interesting experience driving a Jeep around. We were in an area that had been devastated by fire bombs. As far as you could see, it would be just foundations. And we got a flat tire. Well, all of a sudden, people appeared and came over and insisted on changing that tire for us and ushered us over to one brick building that was still standing. And it was occupied by a doctor who had trained at Columbia in New York City. They became very good friends and entertained us royally for months afterwards. In fact, they were supposed to have a geisha party about the time that I got orders to leave, but anyway. They were very generous in return for cigarettes. They would give all kinds of gifts. I have an obi hanging outside the door here that quite a decorative thing that that doctor gave me.
Great. So how long were you there?
From September to December. In December, I got orders to proceed home, and on the General Randall. I don't remember exactly what kind of a ship. It wasn't a troop ship. It might have been just a supply ship. But at any rate, it was a nice trip to Seattle. We got there just about New Year's Day. Spent New Year's Eve in Seattle. And then Then I proceeded by rail to Fort Devon in Massachusetts, where I was separated. And that took place on well, in January, I became a captain and was released from duty. And final separation took place February 20th, 1946. May 18th, I met my wife.
Okay, so let me ask you some more questions about the wartime experiences. Can you describe a typical day for you in service? If there was a typical day?
There's no typical day because I had so many different experiences. In fact, I'm embarrassed. I've been embarrassed to talk about the whole experience because so many people were in combat and had terrible experiences, and I just had it so easy. I can't believe. It didn't seem like anything worth talking about.
I think it's definitely worth talking about. Everyone's experience is valid and yeah. Well, speaking of that, were there any casualties in your unit?
No, well, the 91st Division, yes, they, and my friend Al Crookton, not a casualty, no, but they did go to Italy and served in the Po Valley. He had some injuries, but he got home, became my roommate for a short time in New York City, and married the nurse, Jenny Gingras, that he had met along with me at Camp White in Oregon.
Were you awarded any medals or citations?
Nothing special, just the ordinary ones for the theater and good conduct and so forth. I can't remember what they all were.
Okay. Okay, great. So now I'm going to ask you some questions about daily life. How did you stay in touch with your family?
By mail, and I did get leave a few times. I crossed the country several times, and whenever I got back east, I managed to get, I guess I got home maybe 3, maybe 4 times during those years. My father had kept my 36 Plymouth up on blocks, so when I got home, I had a nice car to drive.
What was the food like in service?
All right.
All right.
Mostly very good. Officers' clubs were a lot of fun on weekends.
Did you ever feel any pressure or stress?
I think my wife laughed because she knows I'm pretty laid back.
Okay. And was there anything special you did for good luck?
No.
Well, you have your silver dollar.
Yeah.
And how did people entertain themselves?
The usual ways. One thing we did a lot in officers' clubs on weekends, we did a lot of singing. We'd have tables that would kind of compete with each other. singing all the old songs.
And you sang, of course.
Hmm.
Did you see any USO shows?
Did I what?
Did you see any USO shows?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah, there's one in Hawaii, and I don't remember any of those that I've seen with, who was the guy who had so many of those great shows?
Bob Hope.
Bob Hope, yeah. Thank you, Jenny.
Or maybe it's used.
Sorry, should we? Okay, so you said you went on leave maybe 3 or 4 times?
Yeah.
And you went home. Did you go home all of those times, or did you go?
Oh, I went home.
You went home
Yeah.
those times.
Oh, we, when I was training in Oxnard and Taft, we spent a lot of time in Hollywood and in the Beverly Wilshire. Yeah. Yeah, I had a girlfriend in Hollywood. I almost thought of, when I was coming home, I almost went to Hollywood instead of Fort Devens, but I decided to come home first.
What was Hollywood like then?
Very welcoming.
Okay. Do you recall any particularly humorous or unusual events during your service?
Unusual events.
Or humorous?
Yeah, well, no.
Any? Was anyone a prankster? Did you ever pull a prank on anyone, or?
I can't think of any
Mm-hmm.
incident of that sort.
What did you think?
There's
I'm
some
sorry.
things you can't talk about.
Oh, really? Okay. We can leave it at that. What did you think of the officers and your fellow servicemen?
Oh, they were fine people.
Did you keep a journal?
No.
No. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about your life after service. So again, where were you when your service ended? That was in Fort
In
Devon?
Fort Devon, Massachusetts,
Mm-hmm.
back to New Canaan. I went back to my old job with J.P. Stevens in New York, textile company, who had been paying me actually a small portion of my salary each month. I got a check just to keep me in touch. And so I went back there. And I roomed with Al Crookton on 71st Street in New York on a top floor brownstone. And on May 18th, I went to a wedding of a girl that was the daughter of a friend of my mother's, Mary Bidwell. And on May 18th, when they were married, when I went through the reception line, there was a girl there who said to me, "Are you the one with the square bathtub?" I said, "Yes." And it was Ginny Carpenter, who had been told that there would be someone coming who lived in New Canaan and had a square bathtub in his house. Well, next thing I know, I'm bringing her home, but even before that, we were asked to drive the bride and groom from the hotel in my car to the Waldorf Astoria. So my car was a convertible, 36 Plymouth, the four of us in the front seat. And we piled out of that car out in front of the Waldorf Astoria.
Okay, so what was your homecoming like when you returned from the war?
Well, yeah, to finish that story, by the way, very soon after that we became engaged and we were married 6 months later.
That's great. So when you returned from the war, what was that like? How did people receive you? Were you, praised for your service? How did your family feel about your service?
Nothing special, just glad to have me home.
Yeah.
And but I did, as I say, move to New York rather than commute from home. Before I met Jenny, there were events around town where mixers where you were invited to what hotel? I forget the Carlton. Ritz Carlton. Several hotels where they had dances where you're supposed to meet people.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't find anybody that really bowled me over until I ran into Jenny.
Did you make any close? Oh, well, you made some close friendships in the service, right?
Yes. Pat and Al were two good friends.
Mm-hmm. And you continued those relationships.
Yes. They both died. By now, they've both died.
Mm-hmm. But you stayed in touch for
Oh yes.
most of their lives, yeah.
Yeah, I visited Al out in Colorado, and Pat visited with us in New Canaan. Then later he moved to California.
Okay. So you said you went back to work at the textile company in New
Yes.
York? Okay. And is that where you spent the rest of your career after your service?
Not too long, no.
So what did you do as a career then after that?
I worked for Dan River Mills and for Claude Peabody. And much later, I gave up commuting to New York and bought a franchise steakhouse, a Sizzler Steakhouse, which I ran for about 15 years from 1965 to 1980 in Norwalk, Connecticut.
How did your military experience influence your thinking about war or the military in general?
Can't think of any special yeah, the Army is a great service. Certainly respect that. I didn't go back to flying. I was not particularly interested in making a career there. Can't think of any other particular contact there. No.
Okay. Did you join any veteran organizations?
No, I never did. Somehow, the circles I was traveling in didn't tend in that direction.
How about reunions? Have you ever attended any reunions?
College reunions,
Right, but
school
no-
reunions, but no military reunions. There was no single unit that I stayed with long enough to have any reunions.
Okay. How do you feel your service and experiences have affected your life?
Well, more as an interruption, I guess. Otherwise, it's hard to say what influence they would have had.
What do you mean? Can you say a little more? What do you mean by interruption?
Well, 5 years out of my life when I might have been finding out what I really wanted to do, and then I was married, and well, it's hard to say.
Do you think you
I never
didn't-
did really find a occupation that would really move me.
And you think you would have if...
Perhaps I might have gone to graduate school. But when I asked about graduate school, I was told, well, you got a job already. You don't need to go to graduate school. And I don't know. I sort of went along with that thinking. I'm sorry that I didn't go to some kind of graduate training.
Do you know what you would have studied?
No, can't say. Probably should have been an engineer, I don't know.
Is there anything else that you would like to add that we haven't covered?
Can't think of anything.
Okay. Well, Gordon, I'd like to thank you for your service.
Thank you, it's been a pleasure.
Oh, I'm glad it was a good experience.
Yes,
And thank you for taking the time to be interviewed.
yeah, okay.